What do you think Porky Pig would say if he knew he was on a podcast?
What would I say if I knew I was on oh wow, a podcast? Like coast to coast, like old fashioned. People are hearing me. Oh, I have to memorize my lines. I have to put on pants.
From the heart of Hollywood, it's the Patrick LabyorSheaux with Patrick Labyorteaux.
It's the Patrick LabyorSheaux. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Tonight's episode, Bob Bergen.
Patrick LabyorSheaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Today we have a really cool special guest by the name of Bob Bergen. And if you've never heard that name before, have you heard the name Porky Pig or have you heard the name Luke Skywalker? Well, then you've heard Bob Bergen and I'm sure a ton of other voices. He is an amazingly talented voiceover artist who I had the pleasure of knowing for way too long because we're such young, good-looking men. You'd never know that we've known each other for over 30 years?
Easily.
Yikes.
Easily.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Bergen.
What up, everybody?
Doing, Bob?
Hey, Patrick. How you doing, buddy?
So a little backstory for anybody who's listening or watching. Bob Bergen and I met, I think the first time we met, you were at Universal Studios. You were a tour guide, right?
I was paying the bills, buddy. An actor paying the bills on the back lot.
And so we met there literally in the tour, and we'll get to that story in kind of order.
Right.
But then we worked together in a movie, and then we would work together on a TV show. Act 1, Beginnings. So let's start at the beginning, though. So I don't know, where are you from, Bob? Are you from Hollywood? Where are you coming from?
No, I'm from the Midwest. I was born in St. Louis, and not a showbiz family. I wanted to do voices for cartoons since I was a 5-year-old kid. My mom would tell a story that she would be, Saturday morning, I'm watching cartoons and she'd be in the kitchen doing whatever moms do in the kitchen. And she'd hear a line in the cartoon and then she'd hear the line repeated again. And she thought, that's really weird. And she stood behind me and she's watching me, mimic, Tweety says, "Ooh, I thought I saw a pudding tat." And I went, "Ooh, I thought I saw a pudding tat." And she's like, "Oh, you're really good at that." I said, "Thank you." "What am I doing?" She says, "Well, you're doing voices for cartoons." I mean, that's what, oh, okay. And I became obsessed with this character, Porky Pig. And particularly that character. And my grandmother gave me a tape recorder, a little portable cassette recorder when I was 8 years old. And I would put it in front of the TV and I would record cartoons. And this is before VCRs and even Betamaxes. And I would memorize cartoons. And I would go around, when I was in school, third grade, fourth grade. And a teacher would ask me a question and I'd go up to the board with a piece of chalk and, let me get this straight. And now you want me to do in multiple, you want me to divide, I don't know math. And, I was obnoxious and I would get in trouble when I would go to the principal's office and, he would say, "What voice did you do?" And I'd do it. And if he laughed, I got to go back to class. And if he didn't laugh, I got detention. And eventually my dad moved.
Well, this can break two different ways. So did this make you super popular with the kids or super annoying to the kids?
I think a combination.
Okay.
I think at that point with elementary school, it was more of the annoying, I wasn't popular because of these voices, but I got lucky that my dad moved us to LA when I was 14, which was great because this is where I knew cartoons were made. And once we moved to LA and I started ninth grade in LA, I was the popular kid that they laughed and I did the funny voices and, I would mimic the teachers to the teachers. So yeah, that's where at that age, that's where it became more of a popular.
So that's where kind of, okay. So this fascinates me. Okay. Cause I was bred into this business. It's a whole story. I'm adopted, but my adoptive parents met here trying to be actors. Then I was adopted by an actor. Then I became, they put me into the business. So it's like, I didn't have a choice. I mean, I love it, but it's not like it was something that I made a decision on.
Right.
You're very aware of what you were doing from the moment you started it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, though, were you aware that it was a thing that people that it was a job thing, or just something that Porky Pig sounds like that? I like Porky Pig. You're not thinking of Mel Blanc. You're just thinking of Porky Pig, or did you know it was a job?
So as I got older, I remember, about 8 or 9 years old, saying to my mom, I think there's one guy doing all these voices. I can kind of hear a common denominator in all these voices. And my mom said, yeah, his name is Mel Blanc. He's in the credits. Well, kids don't read credits. I started reading credits. And then I would look for Mel Blanc on TV because he would be on Johnny Carson or Merv Griffin or Mike Douglas, all the talk shows, the daytime talk shows of the time. And I would record him on my little portable tape recorder and listen to his voice. And knowing
how old were you?
Well,
that you knew of Mel Blanc?
I started getting obsessed with Porky Pig at 5, and from 5 on, I started just following him like he was Paul McCartney, And when we moved to LA, I figured, well, I should just give him a call and just say, look, we just moved here. And I've seen you on the Mike Douglas show, and you're getting up there in age. And if you'd like to retire, hey, I'm available. So,
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So
what happened?
Well, I looked in the phone book and I couldn't find his phone number. And my dad very politely tried to explain to me, LA is a bigger market than Cincinnati or St. Louis, where we lived before. Lots of phone books. So my dad got in the car and traveled from Pasadena to Malibu and stopped off at post offices where you could pick up a white page phone book of the area. And I had this giant stack of white page phone books. And one day my parents were out and I just thought, I'm going to look them up. So I started with the first book. I called every Mel or M Blanc in the book, got down to the last book, couldn't find him. And then I thought, well, maybe it's listed under his wife's name. And I knew his wife's name was Estelle. And I found an E. Blanc in the Pacific Palisades white pages. And I called, and that was his house. Oh, and by the way, I should have said this. I was taping the conversation. I was in my parents' bedroom on their phone. And in the kitchen down the hall, I had that little portable tape recorder where I took the phone off the receiver, put it on the tape recorder, pushed record, ran back in my parents' bedroom. But I did this every time I tried to call somebody. So I'd been going back and forth for like a dozen phone books. And I finally found his number.
You know that if you were any different age, you would be a stalker.
Oh, no. People say, what's the secret of your success? I said, stalking. Absolutely. But, ignorance is bliss. And I got him on the phone. And I did record the conversation. And the conversation is on my website. During the course of the conversation, I asked him business questions. I said, did you need an agent? And he said, yeah. And he said, how old are you? I said, 14. He goes, well, it's really hard business to get into. And then I said, well, I don't want to hear that. So you needed an agent. And where are you working today? And are you still doing cartoons? And he mentioned the name of the studio he was working at that week. He didn't say the day or the time. He just said the name. So when I finished my conversation with him, I called that studio and I pretended to be his assistant. And I said, hi, I'm just calling to confirm Mr. Blank's appointment for this. And I made this up for Thursday at 9. And the receptionist says, no, we've got him booked for Wednesday at 11. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. I'm looking at the wrong day. So sorry. Yes, he will see you on Wednesday at 11. And I said to my mom, I'm skipping school Wednesday and we're going to go watch Mel Blanc work. And she said, okay. So we got
What's the timeline here? So you're around 14. What part of LA did you move to?
The Valley. We were in Tarzana in the Valley.
Okay, so that's very close to the studios in Hollywood in LA terms.
I mean, it's
not like you were in Agoura or like you were in Orange County. So what's the timeline? You're from St. Louis, Cincinnati area. You come out here. How long before you're at a studio watching Mel Blanc?
A week or two. Oh yeah,
dude.
We moved into the house, and I was on a mission. I'm gonna track down Mel Blanc and see if he needs somebody to just volunteer to have him retire. And I never told him that, by the way. I thought that was rude. So I never said. And my voice hadn't changed, so I still had a 14-year-old kid's voice. So we got to the studio, and I told the receptionist that we were guests of Mel Blanc, and he invited us to watch. And she said, he's in that booth over there. And we went to that booth over there. And I said to his producer, "Hi, we're really good friends of the receptionist," and she said we could watch. And so my mom and I watched him work.
That is the most, honestly, I've done this, I've done a number of these interviews. That is the most incredible story because of how forceful your love and desire for this is. It's not, everyone's telling stories of like, yeah, I didn't really want to know I was going to be an actor or anything.
Mhm.
It's so deliberate. So what are you feeling when, I mean, this must be the most amazing moment in your life at this point.
You know, I am asked that question a lot, and I'm like probably like a kid in 1930 something watching Babe Ruth practice batting, just watching a hero doing their thing. Now, you know, Mel Blanc was older, but he was dressed in a double-breasted suit with a flower in his lapel, and he just looked like he was going out for the evening, but he was just doing Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig and Daffy Duck and Tweety, and it was magical.
So here's some industry questions here. Okay, so there's a lot of ways, especially because Mel Blanc is a one of one,
Yeah.
right? Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways that we record stuff.
Mhm.
Sometimes, most of the time, if you're playing multiple characters, you'll record the same character all the way through the script. Then you go back and do the other character. You record that, and you can be all the characters like Mel used to be. Usually, it's not like that anymore. What do you? I'm sure you must. What was he recording, and how did he record at that period in that session?
Great question. It was a stage show, sort of like Ice Capades Without Ice, with all the Looney Tunes characters. It was at the Forum, and that was where they were going to debut it. He went through the script from beginning to end, and he went from Bugs to Daffy to Porky to Tweety, and then we heard, and then each character had their own songs.
He would record all of those lines for each character. Or he would go from
order.
Bugs to Daffy.
Yeah, in order. He would go from character to character.
On the fly, he would be talking to himself?
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. Now, here's what's interesting about Mel Blanc that a lot of people don't know. He was doing Tweety, and it was terrible. And I said to my mom, "Oh my gosh, he lost it." And they said, "Let's do a little playback," and they played it back, and it was perfect. And I said to the producer, "What did you do in the playback to make it sound so good?" And she said, "We sped his voice up." I said, "When did you guys start doing that?" And she said, "In 1930 something, when he started doing these characters. Most of his characters are sped up. So Daffy and Slyvester are the same voice, but Daffy sped up."
Wow.
So when I did Tweety a second ago,
and I do Tweety like this, when they speed me up, it sounds like Tweety. But when I do it like this, it's sort of like Tweety, but not really.
My Porky's not sped up, and his Porky was.
And even hearing you unsped up, it's interesting. You could even make the claim that in the same column of Bugs is Tweety.
Oh, sure.
The same, similar.
And well, there's Mel Blanc only had about 4 or 5 sounds.
And it was the nasal sound, which was Tweety, and it was Slyvester Jr., Sylvester's little son who doesn't like that giant mouth. It was the Chicken Hawk, who's going after Foghorn Leghorn, but he's sort of a New York set of tough guy, and that New York set of tough guy can be Bugs Bunny if you just pitch it up here a little bit, Doc.
So they're all the same, and even Sylvester right here, when sped up,
it sounds like Daffy Duck.
So, and then
Foghorn Leghorn.
So I was going to say Foghorn Leghorn, Yosemite Sam. Those are the deeper ones, and those aren't sped up, and those are a little closer to Mel's real voice. Mr. Spacely on the Jetsons is Yosemite Sam, but not Western, not Southern.
Not characterized, yeah.
Yeah.
So here you are. It's a magical moment.
Mm-hmm.
You're 10 feet from your idol. Do you get to meet him? How does he deal with you? What happens?
Yeah. When it was all over, I went up to meet him, and I said, "I'm the kid who called you a few days ago." And he goes, "Oh, yeah." And he whipped out a pad, and he gave me his autograph, and he handed it to me. And, he had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth right here. And as we're driving home, I'm like, I've got the autograph on my wall right there. And I'll show you, if I can show you this real fast. On the top of my booth, I blew up the autograph. So I have it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So as we're driving home, I said to my mom, I don't think I can be Porky Pig right now because he's still doing it. And she goes, and honey, your voice hasn't changed, and you're in ninth grade. So I went home from that recording session and I called Hanna-Barbera. And I said, how do I do this? What do I do?
Unbelievable. This is like the best acting class ever because there's nothing stopping anyone from doing what you did then.
Well, you know what stopped you is being an adult. I think that when you're a kid, I didn't think I was Patrick. I didn't think I was doing anything unusual. I was just doing what anybody who wants to do something should do. Just go after it. If I wanted to be a brain surgeon, I'm going to call the head brain surgeon at UCLA Medical Center. How do I do it? I'm 14. Where should I go to college?
So who'd you get a hold of at Hanna-Barbera?
Her name was Ginny McSwain. And I said, this is what I want to do. And she referred me to Dawes Butler, who was all the voices Mel Blanc wasn't. He was Yogi Bear and Huckleberry Hound and Captain Crunch and billions of... And I didn't call him yet, but I went to my mom drove me to a newsstand, and I picked up a drama log, which is, for people who don't know what drama log is, it's now called Backstage. But it's a trade magazine where they would list auditions, theater auditions, and workshops.
Explain what a magazine is for the people out there who
it's
don't
a piece of paper like a newspaper. Yeah, exactly. I know, right?
Oh my God, it's so different nowadays.
It came out every week, and I found the listings of voiceover teachers, and I called the first one, and my mom said, "You better make sure they're not going to screw you." And I said, well, how will I know? She goes, I don't know, but you better make sure they're not going to screw you. And my parents, we had an agreement. They would pay for my voiceover classes if I kept my grades up. And for me, grades up was a C average because I was a lousy student. And I called the first name, Louise Chamis, and she was $10. And my parents would drive me to her workshop. And I'll tell you, want to know who was in my class?
Tell me.
Yvonne Elliman, who was Mary in Jesus Christ Superstar, and she sang.
A huge hit in the 70s.
Yeah, and it was on Saturday Night Fever. Well, look it up, people. Yvonne Elliman, Saturday Night Fever.
Yvonne Elliman.
And it was still playing on the radio because this was 1978. Wait, who else? Oh, Nina Blackwood, who was one of the first VJs on MTV. And Billy Hayes, who was Witchy Poo on HR Puff and stuff.
Wow, in this one class.
In this class. And Billy and we became...
If I can't have you, I don't want nobody, baby.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very good. Billy Hayes, we became family friends. And she would come to my family's Thanksgiving and Passover every year. But that was my first class. And then I started studying with everybody that offered a class. Oh, the reason I didn't take Dawes' class originally was because it was in Beverly Hills, and I just couldn't ask my parents once a week to schlep me to Beverly Hills, hang out at a Denny's for 3 hours, and then pick me up. So when I got my driver's license at 16, that's when I started studying with Dawes.
Now, having done these voices your whole life, there's a natural talent that just obviously your mom saw. What were you learning in these classes? Was it like a world opening up to you? Were they teaching you mic technique? What were you learning?
Yeah, definitely mic technique. I mean, for the most part, these classes were commercial voiceover. And I didn't want to do commercial voiceover, but you kind of had to do commercial voiceover if you wanted a voiceover agent who's going to represent you and send you out for animation.
Yeah.
So I had to learn everything. Here was my problem. I was in class for a couple of years, kind of spinning my wheels because I wasn't a trained actor. So I went to a Meisner Acting Conservatory and studied for 2 years. I did improv at the Groundlings for 3 years. I learned how to act.
That's a great touchstone. I was at the Groundlings for 3 years. While we're here, I want people to understand, and this is great because you teach voice and acting and I teach acting.
Yeah.
One of the things that people kind of don't understand about voiceover is they think it's just going in and reading and making a silly voice and that's it.
Yeah. When
in actuality, in fact, Keith Coogan was just on the show, and his grandfather is Jackie Coogan.
Of course, yeah.
Jackie Coogan gave him this advice. He says, when you're doing voice acting, know that they've taken two of the things away from you. They've taken away your eyes and they've taken away your body. all you have is your voice to get across the emotion that's going on. And even, I mean, obviously, not even, but obviously in, the great Looney Tunes, in any cartoon, there's huge emotional swings.
Yep.
You need to know the emotional core before you can, if you can mimic a read like you were doing as a kid, that's a talent for sure. That's an ability to be able to manipulate your voice, but it isn't a performance.
Well, one of the things Dawes
what were you learning?
One of the things Dawes taught me was, and I tell my students this, if you physically play the character, the voice will follow. So even though you're just doing a voiceover from head to toe, as if you're on stage, you're committing to that character. So that way, for TV, for scale, for those of you who aren't actors, scale means the minimum they have to pay you as per SAG-AFTRA. For scale, they've got you for at least 2 characters. If they need you to do a third, they pay you an additional 10%. So I've had 2 3-way conversations with myself. How do you not blend voices? Because each character looks different, has a different facial expression, different posture, different gestures, and you conduct yourself. So you're not just reading the lines. The script is a skeleton. Our job is to give it a body. And you have to really use your imagination. You have to see that scene in your head and vocally perform the actual scene, who your scene partner is, where they are, your relationship with them. I remember, do you know who, oh God, I can see him, British talk show host, BBC, funny as hell. I'll think of him in a second.
Active now?
Active now, yeah. Graham Norton.
Graham Norton. Yeah.
Graham Norton was interviewing Tom Hanks. And he said to Tom Hanks, what was it like when you did the first Toy Story? And Tom Hanks goes, oh my gosh, it was so hard. I had no idea that, the camera could be on you for 10 seconds and it's just looking for that reaction in your eyes as you're listening to your scene partner. Or you want your eyes to water up, like in Forrest Gump when he was asking, is my son smart? Because he didn't know he had a boy. He was asking Jenny, is he smart? Because he wanted to be, I'll say, autistic like him. And just that, be able to take that moment for that camera to emote. You got to do that with your voice. So Tom Hanks was like, I kept emoting with my face, and they're like, Pixar's like, you got to do that with your voice. And he goes, and I'm on this side of the studio, and there's a piece of glass between me and the monkeys over there, and I'll do a line, and they're not pushing the talk back button, but they're talking amongst themselves, and all I kept thinking was, they're hiring somebody else because that take sucked. And all they were probably doing was ordering lunch. But that's the paranoia that comes to an actor when you can't. Silence is very loud. And when you don't get any direction or any feedback after a take, that silence is deafening.
It's funny you should mention that because it's so amazing when you are on a set with a camera, you literally, their air pressure, you can hear people breathe, you can hear, but when you're in a studio, you don't hear anything but you.
Yep.
And if you've got headphones on, you're not even hearing you if they've turned the mic off. You're literally just in an isolation chamber.
Well, not only that, but today, because of COVID, and I've only had 6 sessions outside my house since the pandemic. I don't even have scene partners. I don't have a cast. I record everything myself. So I'm relying on a great director who either remembers my scene partner's delivery, and God bless that editor who has to put this jigsaw puzzle of takes together and make us sound like we're in the same cartoon. It's very different.
This is fascinating to me about how you've done it. We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. And I'm very excited to announce that we have a brand new class called Adult weekly class. Now, what is that? Now, that's a class that'll meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and you come in and you have an hour-long acting class with other students. It's very, very simple, very, very fun. So if you've ever wanted to be an actor or try it or just mess around, these classes are great. So the adult weekly class is going to be every Wednesday at 5:30 Pacific. Now come and check it out. It's going to be really fun. Go to workingactorschool.com. Check out the website. You can sign up for the class there. If you need any other information, there's a phone number and an email on the website. You can get it there. And we would love to have you come and try. Talk to you soon. Act 2, Success. Okay, so you're in LA, you're studying with Meisner, you were at Gremlins for 3 years,
Yeah.
you're like in your late teens.
Yes.
How you got yourself an agent, I would imagine at some point.
All right.
Who's going to stop you at this point?
All right. When I was 16, I met a lady at a party who was a bank teller. And she was a friend of my cousin's. And she says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, I want to do voices for cartoons. And she says, "That's odd." I said, "I know." 2 years later, I'm graduating high school, and a friend of the family knew Casey Kasem, and had Casey send me an autographed picture for my high school graduation as a gift. And it's on the wall right there next to Mel Blanc. And
I won't take it, but tell everyone. Obviously, Casey Kasem top 40, but tell them why cartoons are important.
Yeah, he was Shaggy on Scooby Doo. He was Robin with Batman in Justice and Super Friends. So yeah, he was and America's Top 40, and I still listen to classic America's Top 40 on Sirius XM, and I'm listening to it's 1972. Here's the long distance dedication. So
Right.
I sent him a thank you note, and I said, "By the way, I want to do what you do," and I included my phone number, and he called me up, and he asked me all kinds of business questions. Back then in voiceover classes, I mean, as well as I do, back in the old days in acting classes, they never talked about how to get a job, how to make money. They never talked about that. They talked about craft. Today, if you go online and just search voiceover classes, the sell is make money with your voice, which I think is unethical. We can talk about that later. But Casey asked me if I had a demo. I didn't. He said, "Make me something. Just put something together on a little cassette recorder." So I did. And this tape's on my website too. Literally, record, stop, record, stop, record, stop. It was Popeye. It was Yogi Bear. It was Porky. It was just all those imitations. His agent was a guy named Don Pitts. And Don Pitts at the time was at...
Don Pitts was he was my first agent. Yeah.
Well, Don Pitts was the CAA of voiceover back in the late 70s, early 80s. They said, yeah, 78. Yeah, he was it. I mean, he was the big voiceover agent. And Don was at Cedars Sinai Hospital in an oxygen tent. Don't know what happened, but something bad. And Casey went to the hospital, went to his room, and played this little cassette through the plastic of the oxygen tent. And Don got better a few weeks later, called me up, and he said, "I think you're very talented, and I'd love to represent you." And I said, "Well, mister, I don't know what that means. But, I don't graduate high school until June, which is a few weeks away. So as long as it's after 3 o'clock, okay." So, yeah. And my first audition was with Orson Welles in his office. So
holy shit!
Yeah, I didn't realize.
Is your knowledge of the industry growing, or is it go beyond that? Do you know Orson Welles?
Oh,
or
sure.
You just know him as a voice. Okay.
Oh, I'm sitting in the lobby with it's a radio script, and in walks Orson Welles, and he sits down next to me, and I'm thinking, I'm sitting next to Citizen Kane. This is so cool. Yeah. And he looks at my script and he goes, "I believe we're auditioning together. Would you like to rehearse outside?" And I went. So we go outside, and I'm
so sorry. I don't want to keep interrupting you, but I think it's such an amazing moment when you say it as part of the story, but it's such a great indicator to people that don't understand the business. We're auditioning for the same thing. Orson Welles is auditioning.
Oh, yeah. Oh, buddy.
Why is Orson Welles auditioning?
I audition every day. He auditioned every day. Casey auditioned every day. We audition. That's our job. Our job as actors is to audition. If you get the job, that is a fortunate circumstance.
Unbelievable. And it blows my mind when people, it's an unknown reality that, yeah, we're a product and the product is, maybe it's not right. Maybe Orson Welles isn't the guy that they need for that job, believe it or
And
not,
and
even
and
with
he
that
didn't
great
seem to be
voice.
unhappy about auditioning, because that's what you do as an actor. You audition.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So you and Orson Welles are outside the studio going over your
We
script.
ran through it a couple of times. He said, "I think that'll do," and he was very sweaty, and he smelled a little bit like a combination of curdled cheese and cigar. And we go into Don's booth, and Don's booth was about the size of mine, which is 3.5 by 3.5. And I think Orson was about 5.5 by 5.5. And we had to face each other because we couldn't stand side by side. There wasn't enough room, and his stomach was on my stomach. And when we were done, I had this big round sweat circle on my shirt, and I was like, I am never going to wash. I've got the essence of Orson Welles. His DNA is on my shirt.
I can clone Orson Welles.
I know, and sadly, it evaporated, and I lost my essence. But whatever.
You had his mojo all
I
over
did
you.
indeed.
Okay, so this is so cool. These stories are amazing. Okay, so now you've got yourself an agent and you're going out and you're auditioning. And back in the day, you would go to your agent to read. Sometimes you'd go to the studios.
Mm-hmm.
What type of work were you picking up? Because it was mainly, because to explain, I'll let you explain it, but because you know more about it. But the guy, Mel Blanc, there wasn't really a voiceover world like it is today because Mel Blanc was all those voices.
Yeah, well,
there were a couple of
amongst
guys
amongst about 2 or 3 other people.
Right.
June Foray, Dawes Butler, Don Messick, and then you had specialty people like Jim Backus, who was Mr. Magoo. That's a specialty voice, but he did it for many decades. All right, so
what were you picking up? What were you auditioning for?
Well, I'm going to tell you. Remember, when I was 16, I told you I met a lady at a party who was a bank teller?
Yeah.
Right after I signed with Don Pitts, she calls me up. And she said, do you still want to do cartoons? Because by the way, I was non-union. I hadn't worked. She said, if you're interested, I might have a job for you. I said, what, at a bank? She goes, well, you kind of got me interested in this animation thing at that party. To make a long story short, in the last 2 years, I pursued it myself. I'm now a talent coordinator at Marvel Productions, and we're doing a new cartoon called Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Would you like to audition for it? It's just a guest shot. I said, sure. And I auditioned, and I got it, and that got me my Taft-Hartley, which is how I got into SAG. And
is this the version where they were down on Sepulveda at that?
That's where the animation studio was, yes, but we recorded it. We recorded it at a place called Wally Burr Recording in Studio City, which is where I had my first voiceover class. So it was really kind of cool to be in that same studio where when I was 14, I took my first voiceover class.
It's this tiny little place right off of Whitsett, isn't it? Somewhere along.
It's close to Whitsett. It's on Ventura. I would say really close to Whitsett. I know the studio you're talking. That's LA Studios, the one that's off of Whitsett. No, it's not LA.
Then they moved. LA Studios is on Coinga.
Studiopolis now. It's called Studiopolis. Okay. I forget what it was called back then. It was called Screen Music back then.
There you go. That's it. Exactly.
So I did Spider-Man, and I realized, well, I've got to eat. I'm not booking all the time. I'm probably, who knows when I'm going to book enough to make a living at this. So I applied and became a tour guide at Universal.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, to me, it would have seemed like that's where you started, but you've had so much experience by this point already with your classes, and you got an agent, you're doing all this stuff. It seems like that would be the perfect idea of like, oh, well, I'll get a chance to be a performer, and it's close, it's really convenient. Is that kind of all of the thoughts that were in your head?
All the thoughts in my head were, this looks cool, it's using my voice, it's sort of performing. I went to the first interview, and they said, look, and I told them what I do, and I had an agent, and they're like, look, you're an asset to the tour guides because we want performers, and if you get an audition, we let you go to auditions. That wasn't very true. No, it wasn't very true. I'll get that in a second. And I went through all the training and the testing. There were like 30 something in the class. About 15 of us tested because everyone else got kicked out first. And then about, I think, 8 or 9 of us passed. And yes, they would let you out for an audition if you begged. But God forbid you booked it. For instance, early on, one of the first things I was still pursuing on camera back then, too. I stopped doing on camera because it got in the way of my voiceover career. But I booked a guest shot on The Facts of Life, which was shot at Universal. And for your audience who doesn't know how a sitcom works, on day 1, you do a table read. On day 5, you shoot the show. In between, you're blocking and rehearsing, which meant I had to be on the set for 5 days, which meant I couldn't work at Universal tour guide for 5 days. I called in sick. Well, my honey wagon, which
well, I'm so sorry. So the way Universal is set up is the park and all the amusement park is up on the hill.
There was no amusement park back then. There was just a tour.
It was just a tour. Okay.
Yeah.
So the tour starts off up on the hill.
Yep.
That's where the tour guides are.
Yes.
And then down below is where the studio is, where the trams drive through it. And we'll get to the part about that. So we're shooting down below, and the trams go by everything.
There's the front lot and the back lot. The front lot is the sound stages and production offices. The back lot are all the back lot sets and the city sets and the houses and all that stuff.
Back to the Future, Hill Valley, all that type of thing.
Absolutely. And Wisteria Lane for Desperate Housewives, which is where the Munsters house is and all that stuff. So, okay, I called in sick for 5 days. My freaking honey wagon, which is a dressing room, was right smack in the route of the tram. So Assad Kalata was our director, bless his heart. We'd be called.
God, he's directed about 1,000 shows, man. He's a great director.
A genius.
Yeah.
And it's time to hit the sound stage. And I hear just around the corner, over on my side of the tram, I'm like, oh no. So I ran back inside my dressing room, and I had to wait for the tram to leave. And I looked out and I started to run, and another tram goes by and I run back and I was late every day. And Assad did not care that I was dodging trams because I'm a tour guide calling in sick. He's like, right now you're an actor on the stage and you're costing us money. So anyway, I ended up doing about 5 episodes of The Facts of Life because it turned out okay. But for 5 years, that was my life as a tour guide. It was before home studios. It was before we had to go to our agent's office for auditions. I had 32 sick days my last year, which is why they fired me, because they couldn't afford to keep me.
Sure. No, of course. But at that point, if you're working all the time, were you picking up work? Because at that time, it was lots and lots of radio ads across the country. And unlike today, where everyone has a microphone and a studio in their closet and can send their stuff anywhere, back then, a lot of the country's radio ads were done just here or New York, or maybe Atlanta.
You're right. It was LA, New York, Chicago. Yeah. I will tell you that when the 5 years I was a tour guide, I lived on my tour guide salary. I banked everything I made in voiceover. So when I got called into management, they're like, look, we can't afford to keep you because you've got too many sick days. And I said, well, what if the acting thing doesn't work out? And they're like, well, you can come back. I went, oh, okay. And I thought, okay, I can come back, but I've got my knowledge of the back lot stops at Murder, She Wrote and Knight Rider. So I would have to really learn 30 years of history. But I realized I had 2 years of living expenses saved from my voiceover work. So I thought, I can do this. I can do this full time for 2 years. And committing full time and not having to dodge the day job, that was a luxury. And so I was able to say to my agent, I can do this full time. You don't have to wait until 5 p.m. to call me in to audition or have me come in early in the morning because I've got to be on a tram at 10. So it was the best thing that ever happened to me, was being fired from Universal.
This is like so much more great information. So at this point, I just want to introduce myself into your story.
Okay.
So
that's funny.
I had a buddy who worked at Amblin. He worked as a PA, I guess a couple of steps up from a PA, but he worked at Amblin, the actual physical production company that's run by Steven Spielberg.
Right.
Steven Spielberg has a great history with Universal, where he snuck on to Universal, very similar to what
he jumped off a tram. He jumped off
literally.
A tram,
oh my god!
And then just wandered in the back lot and set up an empty office.
And then there was another Bob, a Bob over at the gate off of Lancashire. Everybody knows Bob, and if apparently he would he would wave to Bob and he'd walk on. But so he does Duel, and he does Night Galleries, and he does all these movies, and of course Jaws. And so he becomes this really big deal with Universal. So they build him this really kind of like its own little cool little world over there for Steven all by himself. And so my buddy calls me over and he goes, "Hey, everyone's out of town. Why don't you come over and hang out and we'll go do the tour?" And so I say, great. So I went over, I met my buddy, we go up, we do the tour, and we get your tour bus or tram.
Yeah.
And you were wonderful. You were great. And we were those assholes on the tour who were really like talkative, because I'm in the industry and he's over at Amblin, and you were really good at what you were doing. So we were bugging you through the whole tour, and anything that we would throw at you, you would come back with a much better line than what we had, and we really enjoyed it, right? And so I took you, quote unquote, into my confidence. I said, he works at Amblin, and I'm on TV. And he goes, and you said, I don't believe it. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. So we finished the tour, and then we went to Amblin and we made some sandwiches. And then we were going to have the sandwiches right along where the tour passes by Amblin, so that we could wave to you from Amblin and prove that we were really there.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Yep.
That's my version of it. What was your version like?
Well, were you still doing Little House at the time, or was that after Little House?
No, it was after Little House.
Okay.
I think I'd done Summer School, but before JAG and before anything.
Summer School, was that with Richard Horvitz?
Yeah.
So Richard is a voiceover buddy of mine.
Well, Richard's, all you guys are like so freaking talented. It's like,
we're also, it's a very tight group. As big as this industry is, it's very small. So, all right. So my recollection is everything that you said, but I knew who you were because I'd seen Little House, and but I didn't find you guys obnoxious. I found you entertaining, because most of the time it's mom and pop from Michigan or whatever going, "Oh, look, honey, that shark's made of rubber." So you guys were enjoyable. But I do remember my buddy works at Amblin, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, all right, And I do remember, I don't remember you guys you were in a cart. You were like in a golf cart. But I don't
Yes,
remember. But I don't remember you being in Amblin. I thought you were by Jaws Lake.
Oh, maybe I remember getting in the cart, which obviously was all at Amblin. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you didn't drive by Amblin.
Did you follow my tram? Maybe.
More than likely, yeah,
okay.
Just to abuse you more. Probably, we were probably stalking your tram.
But I do remember,
because I remember there were a couple of trams that went by that weren't you, and so we had to wait.
But I just remember, we go like this, and you guys sitting there, and you're like doing this. It was fun. It was fun. And Patrick, seriously, 5 years, 3 to 5 tours a day. You don't remember individual tours that often. That one I remembered.
Wow. Now that's interesting. Okay, so like the tour, let's just not skip over that. So you're the tour guide at Universal. How many pages are you remembering of script? 35, 40 pages?
The book is this big. The book is this big.
Wow.
This much is the tour. This much is the stall material. So your job back then, today they've got videos. If there's a tram broken down, you got to sit there for a while. They can push a video button, and there's monitors on every car, and they can show scenes that were shot around there. We were forced to continue talking. So I would always find a segue to talk about cartoons, no matter where I was on the back lot.
So smart.
So if we were by Amblin, I could say, and we weren't allowed to point out Amblin Productions for security reasons for Steven Spielberg. And by the way, where Amblin is where the Munsters house used to be, and all that whole Colonial Street was. They moved that to behind Jaws Lake, to make room to build Amblin, which is beautiful. It's like this gorgeous
Yeah.
hacienda. It's just fantastic. But if I was around there, I would say, well, right now we're going from the front lot to the back lot. Around here, somewhere is Amblin Productions, which is owned by Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg, as you know, has done wonderful movies such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. But you may not know he was the executive producer of Tiny Toon Adventures, which starred a new generation of Looney Tunes. Speaking of Looney Tunes, I mean, no matter where I was on the lot, I could be by the Psycho House. If they're shooting the movie Psycho and it's an outdoor scene and an airplane goes by, but it isn't picked up on the camera, they might have to have the actors go into a stage and watch the movie and dub it. That's called looping or ADR. Those are the same stages that back in the 40s and 50s, Walter Lantz did the Woody Woodpecker cartoons. I mean, no matter what, I would find a way to talk about cartoons.
That's awesome. So you're doing these shows. And now you're getting work. The most interesting, or I don't know if it's the most interesting, but one of the interesting things to me about what you're doing, obviously you get Porky Pig. You audition for Porky Pig. You're going to tell me that story. But the thing that I'm really interested about it is I would imagine there's all these weird responsibilities because you're Porky Pig. So how does it? Gosh, I'm all over the place here. You also played Luke Skywalker in all these video games, which I'm a Star Wars guy because I'm a human man of a certain age. To be able to be in a Star Wars project is one thing. To be able to play Luke Skywalker is another. Which came first, the pig or the Jedi?
The pig. Okay. Yeah, that's funny.
So then let's go in order here. How does it happen that you end up doing your childhood dream?
So I was in the business. I was working. I had a good agent. It's 1989, and Mel Blanc died. And I get a phone call to audition for any Looney Tunes character I wanted to read for. And I, of course, read for Porky Pig. And I had a callback. And I had another callback. And I had another callback. I had like a dozen callbacks. And my last callback was for Chuck Jones. And for people who don't know the name Chuck Jones, he was one of the original animation directors of the Looney Tunes, with Friz Freleng, Bob Clampett, Tex Avery. And he hated me. His
style is most famous for the Coyote Roadrunner.
Absolutely. And his style was a little bit more cerebral than the slapstick of, like, say, a Friz Freleng. But he also did, like, classic cartoons like What's Opera Doc and Duck Dodgers and those really memorable Daffy.
In the 23rd and a half century.
Exactly. So I auditioned for Chuck Jones and I went to shake his hand and I'm nervous. And I don't get nervous as an actor. I don't know about you, but I've just never let nerves get in the way of the job. But I'm nervous meeting Chuck Jones. And he goes, "Why are you so nervous?" And I said, I'm about to do Porky Pig for Chuck Jones. It's like doing Jesus for God. And and he laughed and I laughed and I did it. And my agent got a message from Warner Brothers that he didn't like me, not because he didn't think I did a good Porky Pig, but he said I was too young to understand and appreciate this character who'd been around since 1930-something. So
oh my God.
A few weeks later, I get a phone call that I booked.
Okay, well, I'm going to slow you down. That's got to be the most devastating phone call you've had in your business.
No, I've had more. Oh, I've had much worse. Wait, dude, that was 1990. Please, give me some time. So this is kind of cool. I had just bought my first condo, and I was out at a voiceover session. I asked my mom to house sit for me because I had a couch being delivered. And, it was the days of answering machines. And she heard my agent call and start to leave a message on my answering machine. "You booked that Porky Pig audition. It's called Tiny Toon Adventures." And so my mom picks up the phone. She goes, "He booked it?" Which is cool because, since I was 5, I told her I wanted to be this freaking pig. And so the fact that she was able to take that call from my agent was kind of sweet. So that was my first job. But Patrick, I've had to re-audition for Porky Pig dozens of times over the last 34 years.
So in my mind, which I've never had a job like this, I auditioned once for when they were doing something for Tony the Tiger. I went down to voice caster,
Yeah.
and I read for Andy, and I did the reading, and he goes, he goes, dude, you gotta try a different read on Tony. And I go, well, why? And he played it back for me, and it sounded like I was it sounded like I was a gay tiger. It just didn't come out right. It was just not the right thing. So I've never had the opportunity. I played Michigan J. Frog once in one promo, which was
That's cool.
But
for when WB was the thing?
Yeah, when I was doing the WB announcer stuff, they needed apparently not. And that's like,
Right.
It's just 2 words that I was able to do for Michigan. But when you're auditioning for these marquee characters that were all one guy before, I imagined that when they find the guy, that then you're locked in and then you're Porky Pig, period.
I like the way you think.
How does it work then if it's not that?
The way it works is that, early on, they never even planned for Mel Blanc's death. They never planned for a retirement. They never wanted to address it, either from a business standpoint or an emotional standpoint. So when it actually happened...
I'm sorry. In my mind, somewhere along the line, doesn't he have a son, and didn't his son do something?
So Mel Blanc went on a 2-year PR tour and told the world, my son's going to take over. And Warner Brothers took his word for it. His name was Noel Blanc, nice guy. They had him in to do Tiny Toons. And he couldn't do it. And they're like, well, now what do we do? I kind of went in and replaced him. Okay. But he had been in a helicopter crash with Kirk Douglas. So while he was recuperating, they called me in to record.
Gosh, stories, man. So, okay. So you go in, you do the first Tiny Toons, which, again, was just another one of those great eras of animation. It happened right around that time also is when we worked again on Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Fox had an animation block. Warner Brothers was supplying a lot of animation from Batman to Tiny Toons, and you and Paulson and Tress and all the people that were doing like the Warner Brothers, Yakko, Wacko, Dot, and all the things. It was a great big time of all of this. So you were working a lot doing Porky in these different little... Were you doing Porky and like Darkwing Duck and all those type of things?
No, that was Disney. That was Disney.
Yeah, that's Disney.
I know. You know what we were doing? So I did a bunch of Tiny Toons, lots of commercials, lots of toys. Then we did this.
I'm sorry, you did those as Porky Pig,
as Porky,
all the different.
Yeah. And by the way,
okay, so
I'm
who owns Porky?
I'm auditioning for everyone.
Why?
Because they can. Because this ad agency doesn't want to be told who to hire. And this is like 1990 through 1994-ish. So I'm not really tried and true. Nobody who does a classic character has a lifetime contract. Every time we work, we sign a brand new contract, be it a commercial, a toy, a game, a series, whatever. There have been, I would say, 80% of my career, I haven't had to audition. 20%, even for the same producers, they make me audition. Because
I guess business-wise, it makes a lot of sense. It takes a lot of power out of your hands to say,
bingo.
Well, I'm the guy. Yeah.
Bingo.
But at the same time, it's so frustrating because you're the guy. They want it to be. Doesn't Warner Brothers, is there a guy at Warner Brothers taking care of the character licenses or no?
Over the last 34 years, there have been many because executives have come and gone. I can tell you right now that, we've covered each other. There were other guys. I'm not the only guy who's done Porky over these years, even early on.
Right.
Because they got you for 2 characters. They might have had Jeff Bergman in there, and he did a Porky, or Joe Alaskey, and he would do Porky. I think Paulson one time did Porky for Animaniacs. Right. But I get this audition for this commercial for a Nike commercial called Air Jordan. And they're bringing in all the Looney Tunes characters and Michael Jordan, and it's going to be a Super Bowl ad. And I had to go down and audition. The day that I auditioned, I had laryngitis. And no, I take that back. I'm so sorry. I auditioned and got it. The day of the session, I had laryngitis.
Okay.
And I was talking like this. You think that's all, folks? It was terrible. Well, the advertising people took that as I lost the ability to do this character. So a few weeks later, my agent calls me up and she says they're holding auditions again. I said, "What? So am I out?" And she said, "No. What if you were to audition under a fake name? Let's see what happens." I said, "Okay." So I did, and I got it, and and that led to the movie Space Jam.
Right. How was that? What was that experience like? Was it different than any of the other stuff, or was it the same for you? As far
Totally
as
different because once again, I had to audition. Ivan Reitman was the producer, but he was also the voice director for the Looney Tunes. Dozens of auditions, dozens of callbacks. My last callback was at LA Studios, and it was me and 4 other guys. And they're passing out the sides for the final callback, and they're passing it to the kids, the other guys first. And they're looking at the copy with terror in their eyes. And I'm like, what are they looking at? They give me mine. It's Shakespeare. So Ivan Reitman thought, hey, anybody can say that's all, folks. I taught, putty tat, what's up, doc? But if you can do Hamlet as Porky Pig, and it's Hamlet, you know this character. And I'm like, I got this. I could do in my sleep. So I know I'm the worst person. You got this story. I'm stopping you at every second. But you told me once how to do Porky Pig. Can you share a little bit about what it is that makes the speech pattern? Every word is the same formula. So say the word ball.
Ball.
Okay. So to Porky, the word ball, and it helps if you count out the sounds because it keeps your mind clear and in order. Go eh.
Eh.
Do you use your hand? Eh.
Eh.
Ebba.
Ebba.
Ebba bit.
Ebba bit.
Don't get too fast. Ebba bit eh.
Ebba bit eh.
Ebba bit eh ball.
Ebba bit eh ball.
Good. Now you wrinkle your nose, okay?
So you get the sound, all right? Get wrinkle in the nose, all right? And ebba bit ball.
It's so amazing.
Come on, I want to hear you do it.
Ebba bit ball.
Close. You added an extra bit, but on the third sound, push it a little bit more.
Ebba bit ball. Ebba bit ball.
That's good.
I did it on the fourth one. Yeah.
That's okay. So I'm looking behind you. It looks like there's a couch.
A couch.
Same formula.
A couch.
Okay, good.
Wow.
There's a window behind you.
A window.
Window.
Slow it down. And we'll wit a window. Slow it down.
Window. I'm so sorry. I'm just so impressed.
But then, Patrick, no, now you got to make a full sentence.
There's a couch, and next to it will be the window, and there's also a bricks.
I'm so in love with talent, man. That is so awesome to me because it's sort of like it's not a guess. Was this something that you then figured out or something that you figured out and then did as far as how it broke down, or did you listen and deconstruct it?
So when I first got the job, Warner Brothers executives would play like a 15, 20-minute reference of Mel Blanc. Some of the clips were from the 30s, some from the 40s, some from the 50s, some from the 60s. And I said, what do you guys want? Because the character kept evolving. And they're like, well, they're all Porky. And I said, I know they're all Porky, but if you guys look at the first season of All in the Family, Gene Stapleton is not Edith Bunker's 6th season of All in the Family. Same with The Simpsons. Same with anything that's got longevity. So they were like, oh, well, what do you think? And I said, well, if you don't tell me what to do, I'm going to pick 1953 to 1956, which is Duck Dodgers, Drip Along Daffy, Robin Hood Daffy. That's the Chuck Jonesy stuff. If you don't want that, tell me what you want. And then I shared with them, you know, I think there's a formula for every word. Everything starts off with and it ends with the word. So doll, doll.
Yeah, but the hard part is making sentences.
And I stutter.
I will stutter as long as it takes me to think of an to improvise.
But I stutter as long as it takes me to think of a joke. There's no plan. Sometimes the joke is in the script.
Right.
I have to make it sound extemporaneous. But I'd say 9 out of 10 times I just make it up as I read the script.
Which goes back to the training over groundlings. I mean, under
100%.
situations. Yeah. Okay, so taking you back to your very awesome story. So now Reitman has given you guys Shakespeare. Everyone else is freaking out because they don't remember how he would have said this, but you've got this formula. And so you look at this and you give this performance.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it worked, right?
Yeah, I got the job. Yeah. And
now I've had, in fact, do you know a guy by the name of Steve Kahila from Groundlings?
Steve was in Space Jam.
Right. And so he tells this story that Joe Pytka is a crazy man.
So Steve did some voiceover on it, but he also worked on camera and
right. As a body reference for some
yes,
of the characters.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I didn't work with Pytka.
Okay.
I only worked with Ivan Reitman. Ivan Reitman never called me by my name. He called me Porky or Tweety or Marvin, depending on what I was doing that day. And I heard Pytka, who was a big commercial director. I heard he was tough. I heard he was difficult. At the premiere, I went up to meet him. I said, "Mr. Pytka, I never got to meet you on the shoot, but I played Porky and Tweety and Marvin the Martian." And he goes, "What do you want from me? A medal?" I went, "Okay.
Whoa.
Okay. Have a nice night. Enjoy the party."
That's the guy I remember hearing stories about. He was just really made everybody's life like hell on the set. I got to hear some Marvin the Martian, please. He's one of my favorites.
I'm going to blow up the Earth. It obstructs my view of Venus. Isn't that lovely?
I promised myself I wouldn't make you a jukebox. So this is so fascinating. So my dream for you of like, once you get this gig of like, you know, on your golden phone going, yes, I'm ready to play Porky. That's totally false. You're auditioning for every pig role that they are throwing out there. But because you sound just like Porky, you're getting them. We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. But we also teach kids. We have a great class called the Youth Weekly class that's every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And it's for kids. It's for like 10 to 17. And we have a great group of kids right now, and it is ongoing. So if you know someone that wants to get into acting and has never done any acting but would love to try, why don't you have them try starting off with Youth Weekly? Just go to workingactorsschool.com and check us out. It's Youth Weekly every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Act 3, present day. How did you come across Luke Skywalker? Is that the same type of situation where you're just had another audition, or
no?
Like
Okay. So I got a call. Lucas Arts wants me to go in and audition for Luke Skywalker, and I said to my agent, "I can't do Mark Hamill." And she said, "You want to pass on it?" And I said, "Yeah, that's not my wheelhouse." So she calls the producers, and the producers called back and said, "No, we still want to hear him." And I walked into, it was at Screen Music, Studiopolis, and I said to Dara O'Farrell, who was the producer, director, I said, "I can't do Mark Hamill." And he said, "Don't do Mark Hamill, do Luke Skywalker." I went, "Oh!" I said, now, you got to understand, I'm more of a Star Trek fan than a Star Wars fan. So I've seen them. I've just never memorized them. So he was giving me, the lowdown. Now, they had references of Mark. And there's pre-Jedi Luke and there's post-Jedi Luke. Pre-Jedi Luke, he's kind of whiny. He's just got this, I don't know, Uncle Owen and Aunt what's her
Gotta
face.
go to Tashi Station for some power converters.
That's it,
versus when he's a Jedi and he's like, no, you will do this.
Exactly. And then he gets the Force and he gets centered. May the Force be with you. So, okay. So I do the audition and my agent calls me up and I forget what the game was, but they say, hey, you got the game. It works next week. And I said, before you say yes, you got to call Mark Hamill's agent and tell him this went down. Does he know about it? Is he in a contract negotiation?
This is you telling your agent this. No,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I said, I do not want this job if he wants this job. And, sometimes there is a contract negotiation. So they hold auditions because they're trying to keep the first actor's price down. This was at a time when he was trying to distance himself from the character. It was before the reboots and all. So, so I basically had his blessing and his agent's blessing to go in and do it. And I don't know how many games I did, but I did tons of games.
So, I've done one video game where I basically was a looper and I just did NPC background, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Can you share with us a little bit about the reality of recording a game? Because you're talking 40 some hours of recordings, right?
It's
of gameplay.
Of course.
I mean, it takes a long time.
Well, you have to give the players every possible option in the gameplay. So, if the line, you might have a book this big and 30 pages of variations of quick, look right, quick, look left, quick, look up. Quick, look down. Quick, look left, then right. Quick. But every delivery has to be as committed as the first one, because as far as the player is concerned, that's the first time they've heard it. So it's tedious. You're by yourself. You usually record every line 3 different ways. So if the line was Master Yoda, this is too difficult. 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 So they'll pick, we're going to print B, move on. You give them options. It's tiring. It's tedious.
I was going to ask, so not only is it tiring because you're standing or you're just doing it by yourself, you're emoting. People misunderstand. Again, we were talking about it earlier. The idea of acting on camera is exhausting because you're in the scene. Same deal with voiceover, but when you're doing so many of these and you have so many lines like you're talking about, how did you physically take care of your voice and your performance to be able to do it on a day-to-day basis? What are your tricks?
Well, first of all, since the day I got in this business, we have been blessed with wonderful directors. Most of the voice directors, especially for animation and games, are also actors. So if there's any screaming, they're going to save it to the end of the session.
Yeah.
If there's nothing but screaming on a game audition, I might turn it down because I don't want to lose my voice.
That's a real thing. And in fact, I believe, you may know better than I do, that in one of the recent negotiations, they negotiated screaming rates because it takes you out of work for a certain period of days after that.
Yeah. We've got effort rates, screaming rates, just vocal care rates. But I remember, we did the scene, I am your father, and Luke screams, no. I had to scream no 5,000 times. They said, we want the long version, the short version, the medium version. And I'm like, okay.
Were you working with any other actors, or were you recording all by yourself?
Always by myself. The only time I got to work with another actor, my buddy Tom Kane, who was Yoda. He was in the studio doing his stuff before it was my time to come in. And when I came in, I think it was Dara who said, hey, you guys want to reenact the scene where Luke is trying to lift the ship out of the muck with Yoda.
Yeah.
And we got the dialogue, and we'll put in the actual sound effects and everything, and we're like, yeah, that sounds cool. So that was the only time. It wasn't even for the game. We just did it for fun. And so that was the only time I got to work with another actor doing a Star Wars type of thing. Well, with the exception of I did a series called The Bad Batch for Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And I mean, not Luke. I played another character.
No, you played Lama Su. You played the clone person who took care of making all the clones.
Exactly. Very good. But for that, we recorded most of that during COVID. And one of the few jobs where the whole cast was on Zoom and we got to work off of each other. Most of the time you're working by yourself. So I did get to work with the other actors.
That's a spectacular example to me. And again, it's a different actor than yourself. D. Bradley Baker does all 5 clones, or I think there's 4 of them now, but originally there's 5 clones on the show. And he voices all of the clones. And since the clones are the clones, they have one actor playing all of the different characters. He has an entire series of him talking to himself, not as like Tweety Bird versus Yosemite Sam, where you can make it so different, but as the same physical clone, but with different intonations. And he does a masterful job of it. I've always been impressed by that. Did you ever get it on? I was on a TV show with a guy by the name of Scott Lawrence, who he called himself James Earl Scale, and he would play a lot of the Darth Vader stuff. Scott Lawrence would play Darth Vader in different video games and stuff, but I don't know if you guys ever did.
Don't think so, because again, I would work solo.
Yeah. Wow. What do you have a preference on the type of job that you might be able to do your voiceover with, like whether it's a looping job, a cartoon?
Definitely cartoons. I mean, that's my love. I mean, right now, I'm doing. There's a network called MeTV Tunes. MeTV shows classic TV, and it's like it's like All in the Family and Happy Days and all that stuff. So
they show Little House on it. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So they started MeTV Tunes, which is like 24/7 cartoons. But it's the largest classic animation library ever on one platform. It's like you took Boomerang and Cartoon Network and mixed in a little bit of Nickelodeon, and there you have it. And I'm their promo guy. So that's something I do every week, and that's fun because I get to promote Bullwinkle and Popeye and Mighty Mouse and Scooby-Doo and Smurfs and Fred Flintstone, and so that's really cool. But I mean, people often ask me what's the one thing I haven't done that I'd like to do. I don't know. I haven't done it yet. When I do it, I'll tell you. So because I'm 60 years old and I'm still doing what I wanted to do since I was a kid, and my voice is still there. It's pretty much the same as it was when I was younger. I'm lucky that way. I don't have to memorize or shave. I can dress kind of any way I want, from the waist up, from the waist down. Who cares? Because they can't see it. And I'm very fortunate to do this. I don't take it for granted.
I guess that's the question. When you're playing Porky, do you have any pants on?
Well, I am a method actor, so use your imagination.
I just want to point out that I've been in this business 57 years. I started when I was 3 years old. On IMDb, I have 63 credits. You have over 215. So, dude, you have worked a lot. Oh, we didn't even talk about the movie we did do together, which we didn't do together. It was this low-budget movie called Ghoulies 3, where they had these puppets, and you and Richard Kind, and I don't know who the third guy was.
It was me, Richard Kind, Joe Alaskey, and I think Patrick.
Joe Alaskey.
I think Pat Penny was in that too. Yeah.
And so you guys voiced the characters.
Well, I've never worked or met Richard Kind since, but he was kind, he was fun. But I'm just dying to say, dude, you and I did this movie, and it was all of our lines were improvised. Everything they had lines on the script, but they're like, just go at it, because the puppets' mouths didn't really move that much,
right?
So we just kind of said what we wanted, and it was that because of the times have changed. We did like a panty raid scene, and and I think it was Richard. I think it was No, Richard gave me this line to say. Porky, oh God, that was Freudian. My character dives into the hamper and pulls out a whole bunch of panties, and he says something like, "Hey guys, they're even damper in the hamper." And I'm like, oh my God. And we're you guys were playing fraternity brothers, right?
Yeah, so here's the story about Ghoulies 3. So there's these other two Ghoulies movies, and then they come up when John Carl Buechler, who is like this master makeup guy, he's always wanted to direct, and so he's directing this movie, and it's basically a ripoff of Animal House. So it's like a fraternity style thing where the Ghoulies now are wanting to like do their ghoulishness with inside this other movie. And just like you've been talking about, in the movie that I did, I never met or worked with any of the Ghoulies. I never worked with the physical puppets. It was always just this Animal House type of story. In fact, we had two guys on that show. One of them was Jason Scott Lee, and he's an Asian actor, and he was playing this character who one of his lines was the Ghoulies destroy his stereo system. And he comes in and he goes, "Mr. Yamabachi, what have they done to you?" And we do the scene, and he goes, "Mr. Yamabachi, what have they done to you?" Cut. And he looks at me and goes, "Patrick, I don't know what I'm doing here, man. This is really horrible. This is like the worst type of like thing." I go, "No, you're doing a really funny job, but it's like, don't worry. It gets better." And sure enough, he plays, Bruce Lee later, and he's in the Jungle Book, and he's got this huge career. And then they had this other guy who was an extra who they just put in every scene until finally I went to the producers and I said, "Look, you might as well Taft-Hartley this guy because he's in everything. He's doing a great job. And the least you could do is get him his SAG card." And that was Matthew Lillard. And so Matthew Lillard, myself,
no
Jason
kidding,
Scott Lee,
really?
Yeah. So we did this movie, and then I never saw the puppets. I never saw or heard the puppets until I saw a screening of the movie, which I think we were the only people who ever saw a screening of it. And then I don't know when it was until I think maybe we were at Voicecaster that you told me that you were in the movie, that we worked together, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and my friend Marsha Wallace was in that too.
Right. She got killed by the Ghoulies.
She played a teacher.
Going back to one of these other, we worked together, obviously, on Spider-Man, the animated series.
Was that the one with John Semper?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was one. And it also had Mark Hamill as the Hobgoblin, but I don't know if you ever worked together, and have you ever run into Mark, and have you talked to him about both of you playing the same character?
Yeah, several times. I mean, I've got so many Mark stories, but I'm going to marry a Mark Looney Tunes story. There's a studio called Salami in Burbank where a lot of cartoons are recorded, and I was going in there to do a Looney Tunes, and Mark was there. And I said, "What are you doing?" He told me what he's doing. "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing Looney Tunes." He goes, "Oh my God, I would love to do a Looney Tunes." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." So I walked into my session and I told my producer director, "Mark Hamill's out there. He'd love to do a Looney Tunes." And they're like, "Really?" So they wrote him a part, but Porky wasn't in that episode, so I didn't get to work with him on that. All right, years before that, I was on a Comic-Con panel with Mark. But it was me and Mark and Joe Walaski and a whole bunch of other voice actors. And my buddy Mark Evanier was moderating the panel. He was a producer, director in animation. And Mark Evanier says, "This is kind of interesting because we got two generations of Luke Skywalkers here because, Mark, of course, created the character, and then Bob's been doing him in games." And Hamill goes, "What?" And it was total bullshit because, he knew that I was doing this.
Right.
But, we're not close buddies, but there have been so many times I've come to him, "Hey, listen, I got a charity something. Can you donate something?" He's always come with something for me. Probably one of the most ingenious voice actors ever. I mean, he's the Joker. He is the Joker.
He's a personification. Yeah, you can't get away from him and his performance.
Oh, yeah.
What's interesting is you can hear a little bit of a proto Joker in the Hobgoblin because it was before he had done.
Oh, sure.
But I mean, it's a different character, and you
Right.
can hear the difference, but just such a great performance.
Yeah.
And it's, one of the things that, just talking from me to you as far as another actor, what I love about the voiceover job is you lose the look, you lose a lot of the physicality. But like you said, you're not ever not doing the physicality. You just don't get it. So by that reality, you can play a lot more character types than you would if you walk in and they go, well, no, he doesn't look like the character. Here,
Yeah.
you don't have to look like the character. You just have to sound like the character.
Yeah.
And so that's always been exciting for me. I don't know. There's just something really kind of magical about when you're on a TV movie set, and I've been on a bunch of them. When you walk into the set looks exactly like what it should look like. They're lighting, you've got makeup, you've got hair, you've got wardrobe. You are dealing with everyone else that is there. We're all like for JAG, we're all in uniforms. For Little House, we're got horses.
Sure.
It's kind of easy. I hate to say it, but it's kind of easy to get your head into that space. When you're at Margarita Mix or when you're at LA Studios and you're in the same room that you've played 1,000 different places, it's all in your head.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite studio? Do you have a favorite place to work?
Well, right now it's mine. If I don't have to drive the 405 or, get that dreaded call, hey, at 4:30, can you be at Westside Casting in Santa Monica in an hour? I do like salami. I do like Margarita Mix. I love Margarita Mix. Oh, that's where I learned Porky loses his stutter if I drink. We were at I forget what we were doing, but we were at Margarita Mix, and people usually
explain Margarita Mix for the people who haven't had the awesome experience.
It was an oasis. It was like this beautiful, terracotta, gorgeous, and they would blend margaritas and they would have fajitas, and it was all Mexican food. And they
had a margarita woman there that would make margaritas, and it was like what I loved about it in Hollywood, or because they had two of them in Santa Monica and Hollywood.
Yeah,
the Hollywood one, looked like first it looked like just some beat up old warehouse, and you walk in and it's like this majestic, beautiful studio, and they had this gorgeous. I got a chance. I'm sorry to take over here, but I had a chance to work with James Coburn doing a voiceover where he was the announcer for some bank or something, and I was just a character in this. But I got to do that there at Margarita Mix, and it was an over-the-top experience because it's such a beautiful location, and they have this. I mean, they serve you real margaritas.
Yes,
so there you go. So you're at Margarita Mix.
Yeah, they came in with margaritas, and I was like, okay. And I didn't even drink that many of them. I didn't even finish one. But, that was strong. And I went into the booth, and whatever Porky was supposed to say, instead of, it came out, and, the producers, everyone was laughing. And I said, guys, I'm serious. I can't do them right now. And they're like, try them. I went, I said, I have no dexterity. I can talk. I just can't stutter. And Kathleen Helpe, who was, I think, the president of Warner Animation at the time, she goes, what do we do? And I said, I do have a suggestion. I say that we continue drinking and eating. And I will take a cab home. This is before Uber. I will take a cab home. I will come back tomorrow, and I will not charge you for another day. And Kathy looks at everybody, and the engineer goes, we can do that. So that's what we did.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's sort of like, it's not a cult, but it's very close to that feeling when you're working in, again, it goes back to the voice. It goes back to the fact that they can have 6 guys down there doing your job, in a second. I had a gig where I was the announcer for the WB, and I was their comedy guy. So it's like I'm just doing the promos like you're doing for the Me Too TV.
Sure.
And I showed up one night, and I was sick as a dog because you show up because you don't want to hear the story that, what was it, Joe Cipriano always told about, being the Fox announcer. And he goes, I'm just taking a week off. And then that was it. That was the last time he
You
was the
bet.
announcer for Fox. And it's like, you can lose a golden goose if you don't think quick on your feet or just show up and do the best that you can do. I was sick as hell. And they said, you don't even sound like yourself. And I go, no, I can do it. I can do it. And they're like, Patrick, just take the day. We'll see you in the morning.
Yeah, I became the voice of Disney Channel because the guy they had all of a sudden wanted Fridays off, and started saying, I don't want to come in before 9, and then he went on vacation, a part of his contract, and I auditioned and got the 2-week contract vacation voice, and they didn't renew his contract because they were like. They said to me, would you mind working Fridays? And I said, I don't mind working midnight on Sundays. I don't care. I'm happy to work. So, I have a question for you about voiceover.
Yeah.
Because so much of Little House was shot outdoors. How much of that was ADR, was looping?
You're so smart. So I had my first show on Little House, and we do this episode that was pretty much all outside over at Simi Valley. And I had been a little good soldier actor, done all the, like the Night Gallery or the Night Stalker over at Universal, just like, guest stars. Hadn't really done any looping because it just wasn't enough. It was all inside studio.
Mm-hmm.
So my first episode of Little House, I go down to Glen looping over at Paramount. And they go, we have 220 cues for you. It was the entire part. It was every line I had on Little House. And the guys on Little House taught me how to loop.
Mm.
And again, you have these moments where I'm not saying I'm super talented and I save the day. That's not how it works. I've happened to find out that I have an affinity for that pattern.
Mm-hmm.
When you loop, they called it a loop because it used to be a loop of film where they would
Correct.
just go through the same circumstances over and over. And then every time it came around, you do your line like, hey, Paul, come here.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, come here.
Right.
Hey, Paul, come here. And then they add the beeps and everything. And so, but it came down to where it's like, I again, like you were saying about being an adult, again, it's kid actors. You're like, oh, is this what you do? Okay, here's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
It became something that, and so I did 220 loops over 2 days. And it was so many that I just got really, really good at it. And
right.
So, but yeah, you're exactly, the production and how it works where, there was always looping. And then later on, I just heard a story from a friend of mine who did Highway to Heaven. He was telling the story with Michael, that Michael figured out, because Michael Landon was so talented, that if he knew that he was getting bad audio, he would just have them loop on location so that the room.
Oh, so they had the same ambiance.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
So he'd go, we don't have the loop, but just say it 4 times the exact way you said it.
So that's,
and then they would just lay it in.
I can remember watching, reruns of Little House, and there's a scene at the Little House where Pa is at the barn and Ma is at the front door, and he's pretty far away, and the line should be something like, Charles, when are you going to be done? But she's like, Charles, when are you going to be done? And I'm like, that was terrible ADR. Don't you see how far he is? Come on, who is your director here?
Well, what's so weird about Little House specifically is that we had 2 sets. We had the set that was on the location where it was outside, and then they built the set, inch for inch on a soundstage at Paramount. And then when we moved to MGM, they built it there so that anytime it was a nighttime scene, most of the time, 80%, 90% of the time, it was a nighttime scene, and it was a Little House. It was done on stage. And on stage, in a sound stage, 20 feet, a throw of 20 feet is, Charles, come here. You can hear it.
Right.
And I guarantee you it was probably something like that. Or if it was the loop, it was just, again, you're in a room, and if you don't know, the idea of looping is to match your energy and to match everything. And look, 260 some credits. I see you're all over every single big animated film. So you're looping, you're doing all of these things. And in those type of situations, are you Walla? Are you looping characters? What kind of work are you doing?
It depends. Most of the time you'll see that additional voices at the end of an animated feature. So
Yeah.
that's 9 out of 10 times. That's the loop group. Those are those of us who aren't celebrities who are doing. We're like utility players. We can do 12 characters in this scene, not major characters. If you end up doing something that becomes a major character, then you get upgraded, and you're paid more. That happens a lot. It happened to me with a recent Netflix movie. I did a film called The Emperor's New Groove, where I played a squirrel, and he just had one little scene, and they tested.
A wonderful movie.
And thank you. I thought it was fun too. And they just kept writing stuff because the audience testing kept. But I was hired to do the loop group. But while I was there, they're like, you should do the squirrel. So that happens a lot. And then sometimes.
Now, were you working? Was it because Barbara Harris had one, Ike Eisenman and Mad Dogs had one where they have these specific, like an elite team of loopers that go from movie to movie. With animation, is it a separate group of people, or did you work with those people, or is it a completely different?
Mickey McGowan was like the queen of animation loop groups. First thing she had me in on was The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And the only reason I got that job was because an actor was sick. And I've been trying to get in with her for
there
years.
It is again. Yeah.
Just for freaking years. And when I got there, she said, you better be good, kid. And they needed not just background stuff, but there was some specific stuff. So one of the things they needed was a baby hunchback crying, and they needed a horse, Winnie, who was stuck in the mud. And she's like, Bob, go up to the mic and do the horse. I'd never done a horse. In my life, I'd never done a horse. So for people who don't know how ADR works, you wear headphones. And you hear 3 beeps, beep, beep, beep. And on the rhythm of where the 4th beep would be, it's quiet. But that is beep, 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 act. So I got up to the mic and it was beep, beep, beep. and it impressed her. And then she said, can you also do a baby crying? I said, yeah. So I don't even remember the scene, but I don't know if Quasimodo as a baby was left on a doorstep. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, he's left at Notre Dame, and they find him in the rain on the stoop.
That was it. Okay, see, you've got a better memory than I do. So, beep, beep, beep. So I won her over. And by the way, you know as well as I do, once you win them over and you're reliable, you're going to be back. So she just kept hiring me for every Disney Pixar film until she passed away, until she stopped working.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm not looking for any real life, honest to God numbers, but just to explain to people, one of the great things about looping is you're hired as a day player. So you're a SAG contract and you make residuals based on that. So my brother did this with Mad Dogs for years, and he's been in everything from Jurassic Park to the Batman films, and like he gets residuals. It's a huge annuity for actors.
Yeah,
but there's like maybe, and I'm guessing now because maybe 100 people that do it.
Yeah,
I mean, with through all the loop groups.
I would say that's a good number.
Small.
I would say that's a good number.
Yeah.
I will tell you the residuals aren't as good as they used to be, and here's why. So my very first movie ever was Gremlins. And I wasn't a loop group. I was main cast. And I did about maybe...
On camera, or were you...
No, voice. I did the voice.
Mogwai. Yeah,
you
Mogwai, right?
Of the Mogwais and the Gremlins, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it came out on VHS, and I wanted to own it. So I go to Tower, Tower Records, and it was $99 to buy it.
Oh, right.
Well, $99 for a VHS was standard, and the residual pool are based on the grosses of sales and rentals. What a lot of people don't know is that when you would rent a video or DVD from Blockbuster, let's say video because you didn't have to rewind it, the DVD, but you'd get that VHS and they'd say, be kind, rewind. Well, they would charge you if you don't rewind. Well, your residual pool included that charge. So
Are
when
you
I know,
kidding me?
I know. So from everybody wanted to own the Disney movies. Everybody wanted to own E.T. Everybody wanted to own Gremlins. And then it went from VHS to DVD. Everybody wanted to own Gremlins on DVD. DVDs went, well, there was $100 VHS to $49.99 DVD to $9.99 DVD now. Then it went to 99-cent digital downloads, and now they're all just on streaming platforms. On demand, you can watch them anytime.
Yeah.
And so
Streaming is amazingly small. Yeah.
But my residual package, I mean, my early films, I remember when I did, I think it was Monsters. No, maybe it was the first Monsters thing. No, it was A Bug's Life. My first residual for A Bug's Life, I think I did 5 days. And my first residual, and you get them every quarter, was like $60,000. And you know, and I'm still getting that collectively over it's not $60,000 anymore.
Right.
But this is what kept actors going during the slow periods where, you know, you go and you get those stacks of envelopes, and this was $12 and this is $1,200.
I just told a story online where I got a part in this movie called Low Down Dirty Shame, where I was revoicing. This goes back to what I was saying about voice versus look. I was revoicing this Chinese guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Do you know who I am? I'm Chow Yun Fat." And it's like, that's the voice I did. It's not really anything other than just like a bad guy.
Yeah.
And I still get, $1.25, residuals for it.
And that lasts our lives. I mean, that, there's a movie called Total Recall where it's Mars and it's the customs area, and there's this fat lady who's getting her passport stamped, and he's like,
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and then her face splits open and Arnold pops out. Well, the guy that played the customs dude was from Austria, and he sounded just like Arnold. And the director was like, we need to revoice him because it's going to give the joke away. How long have you been on Mars? It's like, so it's my voice coming out of his mouth. I worked on that film probably an hour. I'm still getting residuals from that movie.
That's great. I love Hollywood. We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. Now, besides classes, I also offer a one-on-one session. It's an hour just between you and me working on a particular piece of material, whether it's for an upcoming audition or maybe you're working on something and you need to have that breakthrough moment. These are really, really fun, and they're really, really great because they're really personalized and intense in all the good ways that intense can be. So if you're working on something, if you want to break through, if you want to have a one-on-one session where you're not working with other people, this is the way to do it. All the information is in the classes page on workingactorsschool.com. Act 4, questions. What we do to end up here is I ask you a couple of questions. And first question here is called That's Showbiz. Mm-hmm. What would you say is the most Hollywood moment that you've experienced in your life?
Oh, I've had so many. I've been lucky. I mean, can it be a combination of Hollywood and music?
Absolutely.
So I'm at the Annie Awards, which is sort of like the animation Oscars, and I'm presenting with Patrick Warburton. He was Kronk in
Emperor's
New
Groove.
And I was the squirrel in Emperor's New Groove. And Tony Bancroft was the animator. And Patrick and I did a back and forth with Kronk and the squirrel. And Tony, my agent, was there with me. And he comes up to my agent and says, "Hey, I'm working on this. We're trying to get this cartoon sold. We're doing like this little sizzle reel. It's a cartoon written and produced by Paul McCartney. And I think Bob would be perfect for it. It only pays scale, but would he do it?" And she's like, "Would you do it?" I said, "Would I do it? I'll pay them." So, and I'm in Woodland Hills. The studio was like down the street from who knew there was a cartoon studio down the street from my house? And, I don't get nervous. I'm not nervous. It was like Chuck Jones. I'm like this. And I'm sitting in the lobby and I see Paul McCartney is in the kitchen right over there. And I walk over to the kitchen and Tony said, I've been dying to do this. Porky Pig, Beetle, Porky Pig. And Paul McCartney, I was playing a pygmy hippopotamus and from Swahili and creating the whole language. And, we did our takes and Paul's directing me and I'm not the selfie kind of guy. I've just never been that person. So we're in the little break room waiting to do another take. And I'm trying to do like small talk with Paul McCartney. And like, so Paul, you done any other cartoons? And I do a lousy Paul McCartney, and he goes, well, Yellow Submarine, but it wasn't us. We didn't do our voices. I said, oh, what was that? And he goes, oh, it was the boys in the band. And I say, oh, do you do music? And he goes, oh yeah. I said, no, dude, I know you do music. I'm just messing with you. And I'll leave the story with this. I said to him, do you ever wish it had never happened? He goes, what? I said, everything. The Beatles, Wings. You ever wish? Yeah, I'm just a regular guy going to Trader Joe's for an avocado. And he goes, every once in a while in the loo. I said, really? He goes, you'd be amazed at the people. You're standing there and you unzipped and you're holding your willy and somebody says, Mr. McCartney, can I have an autograph? And you're like, I'm a little busy right now. So anyway, that's my Hollywood story.
That's amazing. Some balls on you, man, to fuck with Paul McCartney like that. Okay, that's Showbiz Part 2.
Okay.
The most embarrassing Hollywood moment. Could be almost the same story.
It recently happened.
Oh.
So if my stories are too long, dude, just shut me up, okay? Because I tend to talk.
No, this is great.
I'm at a restaurant called Cal del Soleil in like near Toluca Lake with my buddy who's Donald Duck, and he's a buddy of mine, and we're having dinner, and Seth MacFarlane walks by.
Who?
Seth MacFarlane.
Okay.
And Daniel goes, oh my God, we've got to meet him. And he goes, have you ever met him? I said, no, I've never met him. I've worked on Family Guy, but he wasn't there. I've never met him. And then William Shatner walks by. And I said, okay, here's why I want to meet William Shatner. I was a huge Boston Legal fan. And at the end of every episode, he and James Spade would be sitting there smoking these big old cigars. And I'm a big cigar smoker. And I always wanted to know what brand he smoked. So I thought, well, that's going to be my Mr. Shatner. Can I just ask you a question? So we were like, how do we go from table to table? You can't just, they're dining together.
Oh
so
my
I'm like,
God.
this is great. So we go over there and I say, Mr. MacFarlane, first of all, you're the current generation of classic animation. I'm Porky Pig. He's Donald Duck. And we're just big fans of yours. And thank you for the work you do. And he's like, oh, okay, thank you. And Shatner goes, I think you need to leave. And I said, oh no, I've got something for you. And he stands up and he gets in my face and he starts turning red and purple and he's bulging he goes, I'm going to call the goddamn manager. Get the hell out of here. I thought he was joking. I said, take it easy, Captain Kirk. It's okay. But I do have a question for you. And then he starts spitting at me and I'm realizing, oh, this is real. Okay. I said, okay, guys, well, bye. See you later. And we walked away and I turned to Daniel. I said, that did not go the way I wanted it to go. Now, there's a little part 2 to this. So Daniel went back to the table to pay for the bill. I had to go to the men's room. And there's a bar right before the men's room. This guy at the bar goes, excuse me, are you Bob Bergen? I said, yeah. And he goes, "Did you open for Kenny Rogers years ago?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, so I was in the band, and on the tour bus, you were teaching me all about voiceover. And I just want to thank you. I never really pursued it." I said, "What are you doing now?" He goes, "Well, I'm a music producer with David Foster." I said, "Well, you're doing okay." And he goes, "Yeah, but I came really close. I auditioned for Donald Duck and didn't get it." And I said, "I'm having dinner with Donald Duck. Do you want to meet him?" And he goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." So I go to Daniel and I said, "I want you to meet this guy. He loves Donald Duck." And well, Daniel's now shell shocked from William Shatner and Seth MacFarlane. And I said, "No, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine." So we went there, and that's how we ended the night, with a lovely conversation with the guy from Kenny Rogers' band and Donald Duck. And it made me try to forget the time I almost gave William Shatner a stroke and he almost punched me in the face.
Oh my God! I wonder if when you said, you're a great voiceover and I'm Donald Duck and I'm
Okay, as we were leaving,
did they think that you were just making it up?
No, I think they thought we were a couple of kooks because we're in the parking lot waiting for our car. And I said, "I never said the voice of. I just said I'm Porky Pig. He's Donald Duck." So of course they think we're a couple of nuts.
Right. Now you said two things here. You slipped it in. One, you're a big cigar smoker. I would be freaking out. When I was asking earlier, like, what do you do to take care of yourself? Doesn't that freak you out? Like for smoking,
when
or
I say
changing your voice, or
I enjoy a cigar, but I'm a once a monther, maybe.
Okay.
I'm an occasion cigar. I will only smoke it outside. It's too cold to smoke them outside at night. So, but I don't inhale. You don't inhale cigars. So you know what it is for me, Patrick? To light a cigar is about a 1 to 2 hour commitment. It's relaxing. And I like the aroma.
For sure. But I know if you're not chomping stogies every night.
No.
It's not going to affect your voice.
No.
And then the second thing is you opened up for Kenny Rogers.
I did.
What the hell? Where was that story? What's going on there? Did you have a stand-up routine, or?
Well, I'd written a one-man show, and it was basically autobiographical. The first act was it was called Bob Bergen. So here's the deal: the story of a nice Jewish boy who wanted to be Porky Pig. And so the first act is the kid who wants to be Porky Pig. The second act is, but I have to pay the bills to be a tour guide at Universal Studios. And the third act is, and here are some stories of playing Porky Pig. And I had a manager at the time, and we put it up in this little teeny theater. And my manager videotaped it. And he had a friend who was also a manager named Ken Cragen. And he showed Ken the tape. And Ken represented Kenny Rogers. And he said, "Look, Kenny needs an opening act for the rest of his West Coast tour, summer tour. Can you take 20 minutes of this and open for him?" And I said, "Well," and my manager goes, "We'll do it." That was on a Monday. On Wednesday, I'm in Oakland at this giant open air amphitheater for 3,500 people. And I'd never memorized anything. I just kind of was working on 3x5 cards when they take. It was a little nerve wracking. But I did it for several towns, Oregon, California. I forget where else. But we did about maybe a dozen shows.
That's a great story. How was the experience? I'm sure you ran into Kenny Rogers.
I never saw him again. I only did that. Well, I found out he didn't like cartoons, so I don't think he was happy with his manager for booking me. His wife Wanda was adorable. She was delightful. And man, the guys in the band, because I would travel on their tour bus, were so cool and so fun and so down to earth and they'd been working with him forever. And he did the same show every night. Same ad libs, same interactions, everything.
Was Mickey Jones a part of this group at this time, or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I know who he is. I will tell you
with him. His family.
What's that?
Do you know Ike Eisenman by any chance?
Sure.
And whatnot?
Sure.
Okay, so his dad was in First Edition with Kenny Rogers.
And I knew that.
So and Mickey Jones and all those guys hung out together. Yeah, exactly. So it was sort of like a lot of those musicians would hang out at Ike's house.
Yeah,
we were
kids. What impressed me about Kenny Rogers, first of all, just an amazing showman, but even though every show was the same script, it seems so improvised off the cuff. And that's
Yeah.
the genius of a true performer, to make it sound fresh, and that he's
Right.
just coming up with this tonight. It was a thrill. It was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
that's a great example of the different formats of performance, like we've been talking about: on camera, voiceover. Announcer is a different thing than, even though it's your same voice, you're not using the same voice for an announcer that you're using for a character. And for a performer in a live situation, telling a story, making it seem spontaneous so that you feel like you're enjoying that moment is completely different. All right, the next question here.
Yes, sir.
Show me the money. Now, the biggest missed financial opportunity. Don't need numbers, but like in our business, we're always in the area where we could either come into a huge windfall or we say no to something. What's your biggest missed financial opportunity?
It wasn't that I said no, but you remember the Budweiser frogs?
Yeah.
So I booked Budweiser. And Brad Garrett was Bud.
Uh-huh.
Roger Bumpus, who's Squidward on SpongeBob, was Wise, and I was And they had the animatronic frogs at the voiceover session, and for inspiration. And they played us the demo of like their interns who just recorded the rhythm, Budweiser, and just to learn the rhythm of the spot. And I said, "Do you want us to sound like those guys?" And they're like, "No, they're interns. We want you to guys do the voice you auditioned for, but that's the rhythm, Budweiser." So, and my was very different than what was okay. So it was a Super Bowl commercial, and so I threw a Super Bowl party. And the commercial comes on, and I'm the only one in the room who realizes that's not me. And they didn't tell us that they'd replace us. What they did was they played the demo for the guys at Anheuser-Busch, and they liked the demo. So they just used them, and they Taft-Hartley these guys. And for about a decade, they made a freaking fortune as the Budweiser frogs.
Fortune.
Yeah.
I'm amazed. I had, when I was at Groundlings, I was in the Sunday show, and I had a sketch that ran for a long time where I did the full, not even knowing this because I didn't read for it, but they did it at the voice caster. And I heard the story about Brad Garrett being the Bud voice.
Oh, okay.
And I just laughed in my head, like, what's that, audition process like? And so I had a sketch at Groundlings of auditioning for Bud. It's like, give me A, B, and C, Bud. And that was just like, that was all it was. And then it's like, it turns out it can be $1 million job when it's that type of, national ad that goes for over and over again.
Right.
In fact, I had the easiest job I ever got was for DiGiorno Pizza. And I went into, it was LA Studios. I went in and they were auditioning there. And they said, give us, it's not DiGiorno, it's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. And so I did A, B, and C, and they said, okay, that's it. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I booked it. But because it was at LA Studios, they used the audition. And so I never even recorded it. And that ran for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was like something that I had no connection to. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't, a whole story.
You didn't have to call your acting coach to your trailer to get into the mood, to find that emotion. By the way, when you were at the Groundlings, did you work with Tony Sepulveda?
He was our director. Yeah.
Well, Tony and I were tour guides together.
Oh my God. Isn't Tony the best? I love Tony.
At that time, you took my tour.
Wow. I bet he was a really good one too. And it's funny because he ended up at Warner Brothers as the head of casting. So
that's right.
It's not like, a lot of these tour guides, you guys are ruling the world here. Okay. A couple more questions.
Okay.
Show and tell. As a teenager, favorite poster in your room. I'm already guessing what it is. And how did you come to obtain it?
It has nothing to do with cartoons. My favorite poster was a giant life-size poster of Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster that my dad got on a business trip at an airport gift shop. And and right next to that, I had a giant poster of of Groucho Marx. So I'm a huge fan of actors, and as you can see behind me, I've got life masks of various. I've got you got Hitchcock, you got Nicholson, you got Brando, you got Cagney, you got up and above, very top, you got.
I was noticing that. Where do you find something like that?
I just bid on online. I just I'll just bid, and I'm a cheap bidder. So if I don't get it, I'm not going to spend a fortune. But yeah, so I just collect life masks. But I would look. I was looking for. I was looking for Mel Blanc's life mask. Now, why would Mel Blanc have a life mask? He was a cartoon guy. But
Sure.
but I found Hitchcock. I went, that looks cool. I'll get that. So yeah, I just bid online. So but yeah, that's not a poster, but that just goes to my love of classic actors and characters.
Well, and then you end up at Universal, which is the home of Frankenstein and Boris Karloff.
Oh yeah, and I used to. A bunch of us watched the movie Psycho in the Psycho House one night. We snuck on the lot. Yeah.
Thank you. That is such a great idea. Oh my God, using Hollywood for your own purposes. Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I got into. I didn't get into trouble, but I could. I should.
That's that. I'm going to tell that story to a lot of different people. Okay, Showdown. Best thing you ever did. Worst thing you ever did.
Work wise.
Yeah, work wise. Saved a girl, murdered a person. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for
I know, but because here's the thing. I would say, 99% of what we do is just a gig. It pays the bills. My heart's not in it. But every once in a while, I can't tell you the best thing I ever did because I signed a lifetime NDA. I know. And it had nothing to do with it means that I signed a lifetime NDA that I can't talk about it. But it's something.
So this is fascinating. So you did a job. You were hired for a job, and part of it is a non-disclosure agreement where you can't say that you did it. And I don't know anything about this. I'm going to make this up. Let's say there's a famous actor that can't speak anymore, and they want you to mimic his voice, but he doesn't want anyone else to know that it's not him talking anymore, like a Val Kilmer or somebody. And so you go in and do something like this.
I've done that. I've done that too. Where I've revoiced classic actors, and they've said, I didn't sign an NDA, but they said, you just keep your mouth shut and don't talk to anybody about it. Okay. It wasn't even an acting job. It wasn't a voiceover job. I was hired to do something that the entire world has experienced. And I can't, and I've asked my agent a million times, can you get me out of this NDA? Because what does it matter that I talk about this? It doesn't make or break anybody involved in this, but I can use it to my advantage career-wise. And the company won't, I almost said the company's name, the company will not let me get out of the NDA. But I will tell you, it was quite possibly the absolute coolest job I've ever had in and it was a month-long job. Coolest job I ever had in my entire life.
That's literally the best answer I've ever had for this question. Because now people, if you're watching, put all your guesses down in the comments.
You'll never guess, and I'm dying to hear what the guesses are.
Okay.
And the worst job.
And then
the worst job.
Yeah, the worst job. That could be the same one. That's the worst thing about it.
That is, I'm gonna say that, yeah, because that it's a great job, but it's I can't talk about it, can't divulge it. So yeah, okay.
And sadly, it doesn't matter because he signed an NDA. It's not like once we stop shooting this podcast, he's going to tell me. Right. Okay, so finally, show me some love. Yeah. What's your favorite performance of mine?
I have one. It's a really good one. It's the one where Nellie talks you into cheating in school.
You know your little house.
I do. And I had this conversation with Melissa Gilbert because she was on my executive committee at the TV Academy. I was trying to get her to run for governor. And I was just like spewing Little House stuff. Because, I grew up. I was, what year did that debut? Like 74-ish, 75-ish?
Yeah, exactly.
So I was
74
10. I was 10. Yeah. So I was the demographic. But I remember, and Allison's a buddy. So I've been on her podcast and I've talked to her about the same thing. Like, I love that episode. And you were just so angst driven. And, it was the wholesome days where, you know, a conscience was the worst thing to disappoint your parents. Well, that's the end. That it doesn't get any worse than that. So you were brilliant in that, buddy.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm always amazed that people know of any of this stuff, especially when it goes back that far. Epilogue. All right, man. So here we are. It's the epilogue. Tell me what plug away. I want to know what you're doing. As far as I know, you teach voiceover, so you could be some 15-year-old kid's voiceover teacher.
I mean,
what do you do?
I used to do workshops, 8-week workshops. Now I'm doing everything private Zooms. I have a 4-year wait list. Because I only do like two. I only do like maybe 2 a week. But I will tell you this: if anybody says, I heard you on the Patrick, did you call it the LabyorSheaux? Is that what you call it?
Patrick LabyorSheaux with Patrick Labyorteaux.
Okay,
get my name in there as many times.
If people say I heard this on Patrick's show, I'll bump them up the list. But I'm expensive. Don't do this unless you're an actor, unless you've studied acting. And I would prefer you've also studied improv. Don't make mine your first workshop.
Yeah, it would be. You can't know. This is not some guy who teaches, lessons over the internet for, some scratch. This is like getting lessons from Mel Blanc himself. It's literally, he's a professional. So he's got professional prices. He needs to make at least what he would make.
Well, and I don't want to waste anybody's time or money.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the first things I say to people when people call about the acting school that I run. First thing I tell them is, first of all, I guarantee you I will not get you work. Yeah. I don't know if you will get work. It's not about that. You can't do that. What's the website? I mean, it should be pretty easy, right?
It's bobbergen.com. And I'm also on Facebook. I'm on X. I'm on Instagram. I'm easy to find. I mean, I'm actually in the phone book. I now there still is
under E blank.
There is, but you can do it online. And I always wanted to never think of myself as being above. If somebody wants to find me in the phone book, I'm there. You can find me.
Have you had a kid call you?
Oh, all the time.
That's great.
You know who called me? And I'm doing a private with her because she stayed on my wait list. Do you know the actor comedian Kevin James?
Yeah.
So we're at a friend's house, and my cell phone rings. And this girl says, I'm 14, and I know you called Mel Blanc, and wow. I just thought I'd call you. And I said the same thing Mel Blanc said to her. How did you get my number? Because my cell phone isn't listed on any of my advertising.
Oh, right. Okay.
She said she just did some homework. And so I spent an hour on the phone with her. And she hadn't had any experience. I said, I want you to get some experience. And I want you to do school plays. And I want you to just watch videos on YouTube and just absorb this stuff. I'm going to put you on my wait list. And sure enough, it was her time. And I contacted her and she says, yeah, I'm ready. I've been doing this, that, and the other. I said, great. So we're working together in the next couple of months.
That's fantastic. So you're literally giving back. It's a full circle situation.
It's kind of cool.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for not only the time, but like some of the best stories that I've had on the show, and just a great career. And there's nothing different than what you've been doing, right? It's just you don't know what your next gig is, and it could be anything.
And that goes back to what you just said. If somebody says to you, "Will I work if I study with you?" If I can't guarantee my own next job, how can I guarantee a student's next job? Right. So yeah, all you and I can do as teachers is teach craft, and I also try to teach integrity. Hard work, meritocracy, be the best, get there early, stay late. Really, really want to be the best actor you possibly can be. Not a working actor, but a great actor, because odds of working if you're great are better than if you're mediocre.
Exactly. Well, great way to end the pod. Thank you so much, Bob. Again, check out bobbergen.com. And of course, check out any of his 1,000 of credits on IMDb. I'm so jealous. All right, man. Thank you so much.
It's been fun, buddy.
It's the Patrick LabyorSheaux. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Hey, everybody, thanks for listening. I'm really, really glad you're here and checking out the podcast. It is an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's a video podcast over on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever you get the video ones. All of my socials are Working Actors School on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Please check us out. If you want any information about the school, it is at workingactorsschool.com. We've got classes going on all the time. And again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.